Hi, I'm Dr. Ranicki with Ranicki Chiropractic, and I've got a little tip I want to share with you this week. There's a lot of discussion here lately about gluten intolerances and gluten sensitivity and talking about going on gluten-free diets. So what the heck is gluten and why do people have problems with it? Very simply, gluten is just simply a protein found in many grains, especially wheat, but it can be found in a few others as well. And gluten is a protein that no human has the ability to digest. We are all gluten intolerant, every last one of us, but some of us are symptomatic with it and others are not. What it would argue to you, though, is that even if you don't feel like you're symptomatic, it's still bad for you. It's still not a protein that we do well with. It can have big impacts on brain function. It can affect moods, emotions, behavior, all kinds of things like that. But going gluten-free may not be the answer. What I mean is that gluten is not the only thing in grains that's a problem. There's plenty of other things in grains that you don't want to consume either. Certainly, namely, one of those would be all of the starch that you find in grains. All of that starch very quickly turns into sugar, and in fact, there is more sugar and... Hi, I'm Dr. Ranicki with Ranicki Chiropractic. I've got a tip I wanted to share with everybody this week. There's a lot of talk going on these days about gluten intolerances and gluten sensitivity and the gluten-free diet. So if you're not familiar with what that's all about, here's a quick summary. Gluten is a protein that is found in grains, especially wheat, but it is found in a few others as well. And it's a protein that we do not digest as humans. No one. Some people can handle it without any symptoms, but nobody is able to digest it. What I would suggest is that even if it doesn't seem to be causing any symptoms with you, you're still better off without it than you are with it. So that's why so many people are going on these gluten-free diets, because they might find that it changes their behavior, their digestion, all kinds of things. Gluten is a protein that will impact how the brain functions, and therefore you can see mental and behavioral changes in a lot of people with it. So, is going gluten-free the right option for you? Well, again, I would suggest that there's more in grain that you would want to avoid than just the gluten. One example certainly is going to be starch. Starch converts into sugar very, very quickly. In fact, there's a term we use called the glycemic index, which means how quickly does a food raise your blood sugar. And wheat, even whole wheat, has a higher glycemic index than a Snickers bar. You'd think, of course, that candy like that has got to raise your blood sugar very, very high, and it's true, it does. Snickers bar has a high glycemic index, but wheat is almost double. Picture this. Everybody these days, I think, knows what a zip file is for a computer. It's where you kind of compact data into a smaller package. This is what starch is for sugar. It's a whole bunch of sugar kind of zipped up or compacted into a smaller package. But as soon as your saliva makes contact with it, as you start to chew your food, it unzips it and all that sugar gets dumped into your bloodstream. And so that high glycemic index of the starch that you're going to find in wheat and almost every other grain, especially corn, is going to have a very negative impact on us as well, and it's going to create a lot of challenges with high blood sugar and eventually even type 2 diabetes. So that's one other thing we would want to avoid in grain. And then grains contain a lot of different anti-nutrients. So you've heard the term nutrient. What the heck is an anti-nutrient? Very simply, it's a compound or a chemical in a food that prevents or blocks you from being able to absorb and utilize some other nutrients. Right? So you're going to find that most grains have anti-nutrients in them that will prevent the absorption and utilization of calcium, but some other minerals as well. We find anti-nutrients very rarely in most foods, but grains tend to contain them pretty often. I feel very strongly that one of the best strategies for how to have a great healthy diet is to look at what our ancestors ate. And I don't mean your grandparents, but I mean going way, way, way back, all the way back to hunter-gatherer times. You know, you have to go back 40,000 years in history to find even a 0.2% difference in our DNA. Genetically, we're still built for that hunter-gatherer world and the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. And the hunter-gatherer would just simply not have consumed a lot of grain. Keep in mind that grain doesn't grow abundantly naturally on its own. The field of wheatgrass or the field of corn that you can picture in your mind, that's a function of having a combine. But naturally and wildly, grain grows sparsely. And it would take a long time to find and gather enough grain to ever survive as a human. Plus, the hunter-gatherer would have had to eat that grain completely raw and completely unmilled. They would have had to take those grains, stick them in their mouth, and chew them up as is. And of course, if you were to do that, you can imagine it wouldn't take very long before you're going to be rolling around on the ground with stomach cramps and paying a price for that. So it wouldn't take very long before the hunter-gatherer realized that, hey, if I eat this stuff, I'm going to hurt, it's going to be uncomfortable, I probably need to leave that stuff alone. Unless they're starving. If they're starving to death, there's no other food available, then of course you'll put that grain in your diet. And so our bodies have kind of adapted to saying, when grain comes in, it means we're running out of food. We must be entering into a time of famine. And so as a result, I'm going to start breaking down muscle tissue. I'm going to convert that into fat. I'm going into starvation mode. I'm going to slow down metabolism. I'm going to put healing and repair on pause for the time being. And you're going to make all kinds of changes that are really not good for you in the long run, but might very well help you to survive through a short famine. So when we have so much grain in the average American diet, with our breakfasts being bagels and Pop-Tarts and toast and pancakes and waffles, and then our lunches being always sandwiches or pasta, and then our dinners having a side of pasta and rice and corn and rolls and all these kinds of things, we're really on grain overload in the average American diet. And so again, the gluten is one thing in the grain that's going to create problems for you, but there's many others. And I think you'll find that if you go grain-free, you will find that there will be major, major improvements in your health, and I encourage you to give it a try. We'd love to hear what kind of changes you get if you go grain-free. You can email us at info@RanickiChiropractic.com. That's RANICKI chiropractic.com. Thanks. Hope you enjoyed the tip.